Hi, welcome to this video on IELTS speaking. Are you tired of hearing a lot of opinions and advice regarding how to answer questions in IELTS speaking? Well, you don't have to worry. In this video, I'm going to walk you through some of the frequently asked questions about IELTS speaking. So without wasting time, let's start. Now, one of the most common questions is that what is the format of the test? That is, students generally know that, okay, there'll be an examiner and that examiner would be asking questions to you during speaking. But they're not really aware of what kind of questions they get, how many questions they need to answer, how long the test would be, should they be answering all the questions in the same way. So it's very important that you understand what is the format of the test. Now, IELTS speaking, it extends for about 11 to 14 minutes. And that 11 to 14 minutes is divided into three parts, part 1, part 2, and part 3. Now, if there are three parts, it's sure that the kind of questions which you get in each of these parts would be different. Otherwise, you wouldn't be having three different parts, right? So part 1, which is called as the introduction and interview, it lasts for about 4 to 5 minutes. Now, in these 4 to 5 minutes, as the name indicates, introduction, you will be getting questions based on your general background, like your personal details, whether you study or are you working, such sort of questions. Plus interview. In this, you will be getting questions on familiar topics. It can be anything under the sky, to be honest. But the questions which comes under that topic would be all personal questions based on personal choices or personal preferences. So in part 1, you'll be getting questions on familiar topics. And that part extends for about 4 to 5 minutes. And in part 1, you have to give answers in 2 to 3 sentences. Your answers shouldn't be neither too long nor too short, because ultimately the purpose of the test is to assess your language proficiency. So you have to make sure that you don't just give one-word answers, because the examiners are not there to know your preferences, but to assess your language skills. So whatever answer you have, whatever preference you are stating, you need to expand on that idea in a coherent way for up to 2 or 3 sentences when it comes to part 1. Okay, so that is part 1. You get questions on familiar topics. Then part 2. Part 2, the duration of part 2 is for about 3 to 4 minutes. Now, what is part 2? It is called as the individual long turn. Individual long turn. As the name indicates, the candidate needs to speak continuously for about 2 minutes. Now, how does he do that? You'll be provided with what is called as a cue card or a prompt card, which contains the topic on which you have to speak and some clues or hints regarding the same topic. So using those hints, you have to expand and speak for about 2 minutes. You'll be given 1 minute to prepare on the topic. That's how part 2 works. Now, part 3. Part 3 it is called as the two-way discussion, and it lasts for about 4 to 5 minutes. Now, when it comes to part 3, that is two-way discussion, as the name indicates, discussion. So here, the questions that you get will be more general or from a broader perspective. For instance, suppose in part 1, a question you get based on colors can be, what is your favorite color? Now, when it comes to part 3, the kind of question you'll be getting is, what kind of or what shades are most common among youngsters? Do you understand the difference? In part 1, it's all personal choices, but when it comes to part 3, it becomes broader. That's how it works. So, and one more thing, why it is called as two-way discussion is because a lot of opinion-based questions will be asked in part 3, wherein you state your opinion. But for this, the opinion that you have stated, the examiner can always cross-question you. Why is it so? So it is rather a discussion than an interview and a question and answer. Instead of a question and answer, it is called as discussion because based on the opinion that you have stated, the examiner can put in a different question. Okay, so this is the format of the speaking test. I hope that is clear. 3 parts, and in each part, the kind of questions that you get would be different, and the way in which you have to deliver the answers in each part is also different. In part 1, give answers in 2 or 3 sentences, which will all be based on personal choices, preferences, all related to you. which you can relate, the candidate can relate. In part 2, you're given a topic, 1 minute to prepare, and for 2 minutes you have to speak on that topic. And in part 3, the questions would be general, more of opinionated questions, wherein you have to state your opinion and give explanation on the same. And be mindful, the examiner can cross-question you in part 3. Okay? Now the format is clear. Now let's move on to the next question that students usually ask. How is the speaking test assessed? Now, how is the assessment done for the speaking test? When it comes to listening and reading, you would be knowing there is a predefined or there's a specific answer key for listening and reading test. And if your answer matches with the answers in the answer key, you get the marks. But when it comes to speaking, is it possible to have an answer key? Can they demand that all the candidates should be giving the answer to one specific question in the same way? No. For one specific question, for instance, what is your favorite color? A candidate can say that blue is my favorite color. Since childhood, I've been obsessed with blue and so on. Another candidate can say that, to be honest, I don't have any favorite color as such. I'm okay with all the colors. But we cannot say that one answer is right and the other answer is wrong. No. So we need some method to assess the candidate. The method that the examiners use is assessment criteria, or you're given marks based on the assessment criteria. Now let's see what are these assessment criteria or factors based on which you're going to be scored. There are 4 criteria for IELTS speaking. The first one is fluency and coherence. Now fluency, what do you mean by fluency? Students have this wrong notion that fluency means like just speaking very quickly, being non-stop. No. Fluency means speaking at the right speed. The rate of speech shouldn't be, you should not be too fast or too slow. You should speak at the right pace. That is what you mean by fluency. And moreover, fluency means that there shouldn't be any hesitation or unwanted or unnecessary long pauses. If you're taking long pauses in between, it just shows that you don't have control over the language. You can take short pauses to think for an idea. That is okay. That is acceptable. Other than that, if you take out time thinking of how to construct sentences, then it just shows your lack of confidence or lack of control over the language. So fluency is how you're able to speak at length without hesitations or pauses. Then coherence. Coherence is nothing but the logical sequencing of your ideas, how well you're connecting one idea to another. If you have to speak 2 or 3 sentences, there should be connection, or there should be a seamless transition from one sentence to or from one idea to another. That is what you mean by coherence, how neatly or how clearly you are knitting the ideas. Okay. Then is lexical resource. Lexical resource is nothing but your vocabulary. Vocabulary means the variety of words the candidate uses. Now, if the candidate is using the same set of words repeatedly, it shows that the candidate's vocabulary is limited. And moreover, now a question is asked, what is your favorite food? And the candidate replies, my favorite food is biryani. So the candidate is just picking the same words from the question. But instead, if the candidate says, I just love biryani, means he's just paraphrasing it or using synonyms. That is how you have to show your lexical resource. Just make the examiner feel that you know a variety of words. And in one aspect is that don't repeatedly use words. Then another aspect is that always try to use vocabulary related to the topic that you're speaking. Okay. Then the next aspect or the next criterion is grammatical range and accuracy. Grammatical range. You have to show a wide variety of grammar usage. Not just rely on simple sentences, you should be using complex compound sentences. For instance, if you want to say about a preference that is if I'm saying that I loved ice creams when I was a child, then even now I love ice creams. But my sister, she likes chocolates. Now, instead of that, these are 3 broken simple sentences. Instead of that, you can say that right from my childhood till date, I've been a great fan of ice creams, whereas my sister loves chocolates. See, whereas you're using connectors and developing complex compound sentences, that adds on your score for grammatical range and accuracy. Accuracy means you have to show your grammatical range, but it should be used accurately. It should be appropriate. Then another aspect when it comes to grammar is the right usage of tenses. You will be getting questions wherein you'll have to make reference to the past, or some questions which are based on general preference. Then some questions will be speculations asking about the future. Accordingly, you will have to use the right tense. If it is something referring to the past, use the past tense. If it is asking about your general interest, use simple present tense. If it is a speculation, use future tense. So make your grammar choice of tenses is appropriate. Then another, the last criterion is pronunciation. Now, when it comes to pronunciation, candidates have this misconception that it's about the accent. If they have this accent like native speakers, they'll be able to score better. No, it's not about the accent. Of course, you have to try and ensure that your L1 accent, that is either your influence of mother tongue when you speak English, is minimal. That should be there. Apart from that, what they look in pronunciation is whatever you're saying is clear or understandable to the listener. Wherever stress is needed, you have to stress. Then there should be intonation. That is, your speaking should not be monotonous or robotic. There should be highs and lows. For instance, if you are saying something wherein you need to express happiness, and you're saying something which you're not very happy about, if you say both of these in the same tone, there is no intelligibility. Suppose if I say that, oh, I was really happy when the results came out. And I can also say that I was upset when the results were out. So if I say both of these in the same tone, then I won't be scoring for pronunciation. Instead, I should be saying, I was really happy when the results were out. And I was upset when the results were out. Did you notice the difference? So these are the aspects that they look in pronunciation. Your stress, your rhythm, your tone. And it's not about having that native English speaker's accent. Okay, that's with the criteria. Now let's move on to the next frequently asked question. What type of questions are asked in speaking part 1? What kind of questions you get in part 1 of your IELTS speaking? I've already mentioned that. Now, part 1 questions typically cover familiar topics like personal details, where do you come from, your hometown, then do you study or are you working? Then it can be about family and friends, hobbies and interests, work or study. We cannot give a complete all-inclusive list of what kind of questions or what kind of topics will be included in part 1 of speaking. It can be anything, but it will be familiar. The questions that are asked based on these topics would be familiar. It will be related to you, so you would be able to answer. I'll show you a few examples. Now, suppose if the topic is related to internet, the question can be, do you use internet much during the day? Or it can be, what do you usually do on the internet? Or do you do any shopping on the internet? It's all directly related to you. So you can give the answer honestly. If you do shopping on the internet, you can say yes and expand on that idea. If you don't like, you can say that I'm not a person who generally prefers to shop on the internet. I prefer or I love going to the stores and buying things. So it's all related to you, so they are not unfamiliar. Now, a topic can be weather. What is your favorite season? Does weather affect your mood? How do rainy days make you feel? Did you notice? It's all questions based on personal choices or preferences. Whatever the topic is, the questions would be related to you. Now that's how the questions in part 1 comes, and how you have to answer. First, directly answer to the question and then expand on that idea in 2 or 3 sentences in a coherent way. Okay? Now, what is expected in IELTS speaking part 2? This also I've just mentioned. That is, in part 2, you will be getting a cue card or prompt card, as you can see on the screen. And you'll have 1 minute to prepare on that card and 2 minutes you need to speak on that card. So what are the things that you need to keep in mind while doing your cue card is that you have to organize your thoughts. You have to arrange, because you have to speak continuously for 2 minutes. So you have to plan how should I start off with, what should be my next idea, then how should I proceed and how should I conclude. You need to have an idea on that. To help you on that, there are cues given in the cue card. So using the same, you can arrange your ideas. Then use relevant vocabulary. That is, you have to use words or vocab related to the topic that you're speaking. For instance, here, describe a restaurant you enjoy going to. So if the topic is restaurant, then use words related to that. Maybe you can use words like cuisine, culinary, delicacies. Then you can talk about the restaurant's ambience, cozy atmosphere. Then the service, top-notch service. So make sure that you use words related to the topic. That is very, very important. Then speak fluently and coherently. Of course, you are going to speak at a length of 2 minutes continuously. So make sure that you're speaking fluently without unnecessary pauses or hesitation. And the ideas that you connect together are logically related one after the other, because at a stretch you're going to speak for 2 minutes. So there shouldn't be any mismatch of ideas and there shouldn't be any evident pauses when you speak. Okay. Now let's see another question. Part 3. How to answer unfamiliar questions in Part 3. This is one concern that students have. In Part 3, as you know, they're not personal. It's not about personal choices. The questions that you would be getting are general questions, abstract questions. So how to answer that if I don't have an idea on that topic? How to deal with it? Let me tell you. We can follow this approach, 3 R's: react, relate, respond. That is, react means show your reaction honestly but positively. Suppose if you get a totally unfamiliar question, you can say that, oh, well, that's a difficult question. Or else you can say, well, I've not really thought about that. Or you can say, oh, that sounds interesting. So just, you can react, show your natural, honest reaction. But positively means, don't say that like, sorry, I don't know about the topic. Please move on to the next question. Don't do that. You can show your honest reaction as to you're not well aware of the topic, but in a positive way. Then relate. Connect it to something you do know. At least even if you know something remotely connected to that topic, try to bring in that idea, because it's not about the authenticity of the details that you give, how well you're using the language to manage that situation. That's what matters. Then respond. Then give your answer with the structure. You can state your opinion, then give a reason, then give example, then your end thought. That's how you have to structure your answer. I'll show an example. For instance, you get, do you think space exploration is a waste of money? I have no clue regarding space exploration. So I can start off by saying, it's a natural filler, okay? That's quite a complex question. Opinions on this vary a lot, and I can see both sides. Like, I've heard different opinions on this and I can see both sides. That is, some say it's a waste of money, but others say it is actually beneficial. Then you're trying to relate that idea to something you have heard about space exploration. So you can say that, I remember watching the news when India launched the Chandrayaan mission on the moon. There was a lot of debate regarding whether the same money could have been invested on education and so on, and you can elaborate on it. Then you respond. Then you state your opinion, saying that, personally, I don't think it's a waste. Space exploration helps us discover new technologies that often end up benefiting life on Earth, like weather forecasting and so on, and build the idea. Okay, so make sure that if the question asks for an opinion, you are making your stance clear while you're giving out the answer. Even if you don't know, try to relate it with something that you know connected regarding that idea. Now, let's move on to the next question or query that candidates usually have. How can I prepare for the IELTS speaking test? Now, that question, like, I would say that the most important or the most straightforward way or the most basic thing that you have to do is practice speaking. Practice, practice, practice. There's no other way. That is, and I would Say that listening to podcasts, a lot of good English, if you listen to native speakers speaking through podcasts or web series, news, movies, whatever it is, you listen to native speakers, that is a good way for you to get accustomed to good English. You get to know a lot of usages. But that's not just enough. You have to implement the same. You'll be able to use it in the right way, at the right place, only if you practice speaking them out. So make sure that you practice speaking English regularly. Speak with your friends in English. Speak, like you can, if you don't have friends here around, you can call up somebody and speak in English. So it is important. Practice is what matters a lot, and that should be your prime focus. Then another thing that can be done is you can take out sample questions or topics and just practice it yourself. Then record yourself and improve. This is also an important or a very useful method to improve your speaking. While you take out a question, you are giving the answer, you record what you're speaking, and then play it back and listen to how you've answered. Now, when you play back the audio and compare it with assessment criteria, you'll be able to identify the mistakes that you've made. Maybe you lack fluency. There were a lot of hesitations and pauses in between, or where you're repeatedly using the same words. So you can compare and you can judge on your own. That is a good method. Then seek feedback from others. For certain aspects like grammatical accuracy, then intonation, you might not be able to judge yourself for grammatical accuracy. Then you can seek the help of experts to verify what you have said is right or not. So these are some of the ways in which you can prepare yourself for the speaking test. Let me conclude by saying that practice speaking is the most important or the best way to prepare for your speaking test. The more you practice, the more confident and comfortable you would be with the language. So please ensure that you speak or you practice speaking English regularly. Then, what are some common mistakes to avoid in IELTS speaking? That is another question that students have. Are there any mistakes that I should be careful about? Now, some of the common mistakes are speaking too quickly or slowly. Speaking too quickly, sometimes students make a deliberate effort to speak quickly to make the examiner feel that he or she is very fluent. No, that should not be the case. You have to speak at the right pace and don't speak too slowly just to give the impression that you're not very, fluent in the language. So don't speak too quickly or too slowly. Then memorized or robotic speaking. Don't memorize certain phrases. That is like, especially when you're giving answers in part 3. If you start all the answers by saying that, oh, that's an interesting question, or that's a difficult question. So don't go for such memorized phrases. Once in a while, if you use such phrases, that's fine. But if you repeatedly use the same kind of phrases for all the question, it gives a feel to the examiner that you have memorized these things. So don't do that. And robotic speaking, speaking without any intonation, monotonously, that can also affect your score. So please don't do that. Using filler words excessively. Fillers can be used. That can actually cover up or that can actually help you in buying time. But if you use a lot of fillers, that again shows your lack of proficiency in the language. So please don't do that as well. Using so, well, now, repeated use of such fillers are not going to help you. Then making grammatical errors. Of course, you have to be strong with the grammar. Then another thing that you should be careful is to answer to the question. Sometimes students don't answer to the question. For instance, if the question is, what kinds of things do you like sharing with others? And you start off by saying that, yes, of course, I love sharing things with others. Now, the question was not, do you like sharing things with others? The question was, what kind of things you like sharing with others? What? Not do you. Okay, so in that case, what kinds of things do you like sharing with others? You can start off by saying that I don't mind sharing my clothes with my family members, and then expand on that idea. So listen to the question carefully and answer to the question, being coherent. That is important. So with that, we have come to the end of this video, and I hope you found it helpful. We'll be back with more such videos. Stay tuned.
MedCity International Academy. Trusted hands forever.